Hey, Katie, welcome to Power Talk.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so happy to finally meet you. It feels like in person, but basically, and to just connect because we've been Instagram friends for a few years now.
I know we've been weaving for quite some time.
Yes. And so, anyone who doesn't know, I just want to dive right in. Anyone who doesn't know what human design is, and they're like, how can this tool help me understand myself and manifest what I want? What is it? Like, what is the system? Who discovered it? And how has it helped you and your clients in their life manifest what they want and really have a true understanding of who they are and their purpose here?
I love this question. So, human design is to this date the tool that I have found that nails on the head who you are better than any system. And I'm a studier of so many different systems to try to figure out who I am, who people are, how to navigate this world. And in essence, human design is the blueprint of who you came to be. It says blueprint in this map of basically how you're built, what your gifts are, what your conditioning is, how you can access yourself and have very, very specific and tangible tools to operate in the world at your highest caliber. It was found by this guy named Ra Uru Hu in 1987. The origin of it is he had a 7-day connection with what he calls the voice, which was this download into this knowledge of this system, which is a synthesis of all of these ancient technologies. So, Eastern and Western astrologer, the Kabbalistic tree of life, the Chinese I Ching, the Hindu Brahmin chakra system, quantum physics, biomechanics, genetics, all of these kind of ancient and tried and true technologies into this one modern system where it melds all of them and shows you you. And so I found human design around 8 years ago, and I was deep, deep in yogic studies. I was already an astrologer. Astrology is my first love. And I found this system, and it was like a total mirror to everything had always known I was, but didn't have the wording or kind of like the permission from society to be. And I just sunk my teeth into it, and I started studying, and I started what we call deconditioning, which is basically living as yourself for the first time. And I started trying my unique way of decision making out, and I started building my daily routine around what was best for my body, and I started tapping into my gifts more and more. And I had this backbone and this tool that wasn't like telling me what to do necessarily, but was letting me unlayer all of the things that I had taken on that were never mine, and then really, really step into kind of the being and the life that I always wanted to. It's been the single most valuable tool in my life to date, still, that has and every single day of my life provides an access point and provides a mirror of how to be more me. And so around 8 years ago, I just was like totally obsessed with this system when I found it. I was already so deep in all these different like self-discovery systems, all the way to like the Myers-Briggs and the Enneagram and the DISC assessment, which is more of a corporate system that's used. And I was like, human design is it. Human design is this really, really efficient and incredible way of self-discovery. And so I just started sharing it, and I started living it, and I started sharing it with my friends. And about a year and a half in, was referred to as a reader. I never chose to be like a human design reader guide, but the path kind of opened, and the invitations and the doors open, and I started sharing it with people, and I started witnessing massive, massive, massive transformation in clients' lives with just one session,
Wow.
of like discovery, one session of, hey, this is the uniqueness of who you've came to be, and these are all the ways that the world has probably conditioned you. Human design, among other things, shows you all the areas that you're really empathic and sensitive. It shows you physical areas in your body where you are kind of like a sponge and take on the world, and then gives you practices on how to wring it out, or where to know where boundaries are better placed because of your susceptibilities to the world. So I started working with clients, and I would see these massive immediate shifts in integrating the tools of who they were. And as a skeptic myself, I'm like a deep my background is in deep study and academics and science, and I worked in software for years. And so with this new system, I was like, I want to tinker. Like, is this foolproof? And done over 1,500 one-on-one sessions
Wow.
now to this point. Yeah, over the past like 4 or 5 years. And every single session is totally different. Every single chart is totally different. And yet the results remain that one of the most common things people say is like, it's like you have a video monitor in my room recording me. How do you know these things about me? And it's such a joy to provide sight and provide permission through this master tool that really can just allow you to be freer and live as you in your life. And so I would say the ways that human design can support, I know you asked like manifestation, and what I take from that is like being a match for the dream reality that you wanna be, is that it shows you in real time how your body as technology holds your soul and operates to help you play out whatever your mission is, which for everyone looks different and looks vast and looks like whatever you want it to be, but you have to know how to operate your vehicle, right? And if you're operating your vehicle based on the way that your parents or based on the way society has told you to, it's likely not your best fit and most efficient way of doing that. And so it's kind of like landing in your true pace, landing in your true operating system, giving you trust that you actually can have the big dream that you potentially never thought you could have. And that's what it's done for me. And so I'll end this little answer for it. Obviously, I'm super excited and can talk about it forever, but human design has been something that I've shared now like hundreds of hours of classes on. I know you said you're in parts of my lines master
Yeah.
classes. I've done a teacher training, and I'm just continuing to listen to how it wants to be shared. I'm not never I always say like you don't need human design. I'm not a fundamentalist, like this is the way or there's one way, but it has been, and anytime I step away from it, it's continuously a knocking tool of like, "Hey, I'm an ally. I'm here to support you." And I will say that in whatever area of your life you are looking for support in, maybe it's your relationship life, maybe it's work, maybe it's how you eat, maybe it's how to process your emotions or understand your emotions better. Human design really can provide an eye, an insight into your uniqueness in that. And what I most commonly see is just like a full exhale breath of release of, oh, I'm not like messed up. I'm not messed up, or I'm not this. I just haven't had the eye on how I operate. And so once you have that eye on how you operate, things start to get easier. And so this is what I was going to say. Went on one tangent, but the tangent I'll say is that pre-human design, I'm feel like I'm almost unrecognizable to how I operated pre-human design, and I've always, yeah, I've always been me, but my actual trust in myself and my ability to, like, my connection to my body is deeper than it's ever been. My understanding of what's mine and what is not mine, and then the opening of kind of a whole path of a life that I didn't know was possible, I really attribute to human design and to my play within the experiment. Because we always say human design is an experiment. You don't know if it works until you start trying it out. And me playing and experimenting with the system has only opened doors that me pre-human design didn't even know were really possible for my life. So in essence, it's like a blip on human design, a blip on how it can impact, a blip on my experience with it. And I'm super honored to be here with you today, Caitlin, and just share more nuggets and kind of go back and forth on what you're excited about and whatever more you want to talk about in
Yeah.
all of these realms.
The honor is mine first, and second, that was probably the most beautiful explanation of human design I've ever heard, which is
Oh.
exactly why I wanted to talk to you, because I love how you said too, "You don't need this," and that's something
Mhm.
I say with my tools as well. It's like, you don't need this, everything you have is inside yourself, but because of the programming that we picked up from society and others and people that were even well-intentioned, like our family trying to protect us, but it's
Totally.
put these limiting beliefs, this programming, these things that make us not be able to access our true selves or make it very difficult to.
Mm,
So any tools that you can use to help and assist and cut down the time and the struggle, it's so beautiful. And I love how you said you don't need this. Everything is inside yourself, but it's like a roadmap and it helps you be clear on that. And
mhm.
there's also this human design teacher that years ago when I first was introduced to human design, I never actually learned from them, but their marketing was extremely aggressive. Like, you need this in order to
Yeah,
be making these 10K months. Like, you need to have this. Like, you're missing out if you don't get it. And that felt really aggressive and not good for me. And I
yeah,
love how you're like, this is here for you if you want to explore, if you want to play with it, if you want to see how it can be a gift in your life, not a necessity. And it almost
yeah,
felt like a weird burden because it's like, well, if I'm not operating in my human design correctly, then I'm doing something wrong, you know?
totally, and it's like, ugh, I'm really grateful for what you just said, and I want to touch on that for a moment, just the
Mhm,
whole using there okay, so there's nothing wrong with marketing or using a tool to achieve a result, but part of my lens on these self-discovery tools, these I don't even want to necessarily say spiritual tools, but these aids are it's not like you use human design or you work with human design and you have this result. It's like you work with human design to become more of yourself, which it's a little bit reverse engineering it because before you are landed as yourself, you might think you want something and it's not actually what you want. So if you're like, I need to do this because it's gonna make me have 10K months. It's like, well, no, you're gonna do this so that you actually are clear within whatever it is that your path is, and then that tool can help open the door, but it's like the way that the results come are oftentimes different than the traditional mentality of like, I do A, I take this, I get this. So, I
mhm.
always wanna preface that because it's like when you open up these doors, the ego really wants to attach to like, "This is what I want," or "This is what I think I want," and you can have whatever you quote unquote "want," right? But I'm always, like, protective of when that happens, when very fundamentalist thinking happens, because I always think human design should feel like it shouldn't feel like something you need to do in order to have a good life, or that you need to do in order to find yourself, but if it does allow you to move through that path with more ease, then power to you. Like, always listen if this is the thing that actually is calling and opening the next door for you. Yeah,
100%.
I'm so protective because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, I don't." I've created some separation from when there is, like, really fundamentalist thinking around any system,
Mhm.
anything that says, "This is the one modality that has access to truth," because it's just not it's not what I believe at all.
Right. I completely agree. And it's what you just said too. I feel so much because I'm sure you get messages like this too. People find me, especially on TikTok, and they're like, can you help me manifest my specific person? Like, there's, this guy I want or
Yeah,
whatever, or whether that's the money or whatever that is. And it's like, okay, well, hold on. Why
yeah.
don't you first do all these tools on connecting back to yourself and actually being who you are meant to be, that like it girl,
It
the
makes you a
higher
match too. It's
yes.
like the energetic, it's like you want the goal should be the energetics so that
Mhm,
you are a match, right? Manifestation or creating creating your reality is becoming when you are an energetic match for something, there's no other option than for it to come. But if
mhm.
you're like reaching for the thing, you're not actually doing the thing that allows the thing to come in, right?
Yes,
So
yes,
this is the tool that allows it to come in, but it's not outward focus. It's like let's be a match because once you're a match, there's no other option than for it to come.
yes,
Yeah, which is
which
I
is
think is
so
like manifestation is all often thought of as like getting something outside of yourself when really even the earliest teachings on let's just talk about law of attraction, right? Law of attraction, like attracts like. And when like attracts like, there's no other option for the magnet to magnetize the other thing. It's like you got to be you have to actually be the frequency of the thing that you're calling in instead of
yes,
like wanting to reach because it's never gonna click in.
yes, and when you become that higher self version of you, like the it girl version of you that you're always meant to be without all the programming and the
Yeah.
bullshit, you will notice that like you're clear on your soul desires, and they
Yeah.
often are not what you thought you wanted from that state of that past version of you. And so it's like get here first and then see what it is that you truly
Yes.
want. Get clear first.
Absolutely. Same
Yeah.
page, babe.
Yes, I love it so much. Okay, so I really wanted to get into the lines because
Yeah.
you're so gifted, and like I said, I've been in her lines master classes. Get in her work, it's amazing if you haven't already.
Yep.
But I really wanted to talk about this today for someone that doesn't know what their human design is. First off, if they're listening, what is a website that you recommend for them to be able to type in their birth date, their birth time, and I think where they're born, right? So that they can see their human design
Their
and how.
human design. Yeah. So thank you for asking and for setting it up exactly what Caitlin just said. You'll need your birth date, your birth time, your birth location. My preferred website is geneticmatrix.com. It has the most accurate UTC data. And so you pull up geneticmatrix.com, you put in your birth date, you put in your birth time, you put in your birth location, and then you're going to get this crazy looking chart with all of these numbers and lines and centers, and it's going to look really confusing, but every single little thing has something to say about you. And when you look at the chart, what we're about to talk about is there's going to be a part that says profile. And it's going to be two numbers. It's going to be like 1 dash 3, which is a 1 3, or it's going to be 6 2, which is me, or Caitlin is a 4 6. It's 12 different profiles. And if you look at the chart, you'll see all these numbers with these decimal points. Those are the lines. And I know, Caitlin, it's so great that you've been in master classes and kind of been on the journey through how I've gone into the lines. And for me, the lines are the most interesting of anything in human design to
I
me.
think so too.
Yeah, yeah. I just think I mean, there's like, if you look at nothing else in human design, you could spend the rest of your time just looking at the lines. And so the lines are these numbers. The numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're basically like these archetypes of how you move, or how your energy, or how your gifts move through the world. And there's infinite ways that you can actually look into the lines, which we're not going to get into all of them today because it's just like when you open the
Impossible.
door of human design, it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. But the first place you always start is your profile. And your profile, kind of like your sun sign in astrology, is like the archetype of who you came to be in this reality. And it's comprised of two numbers. The first number is what you're consciously aware of. We think of it as your mind. It's oftentimes the archetype that you mentally know a bit more. The second number in your profile is what we call your body, or your unconscious. It's more karmic, it's more familial. It's oftentimes more what other people see in you, and then systems like human design, you can bring this aspect of your personality into more sight. And what I find is so, so interesting about the profiles, or about the lines, they all operate so differently from one another. And when you can actually land, usually the lines, like if you're a first line, for example, if you're a one, if you're a 1 3, oftentimes the 1 3 will be conditioned to act like the two, but it's not a two, it's a one. And so I just use that as an example because what I found within the architecture of the lines, and within teaching the architecture of the lines, is you can start to see how your mind best operates in the world, how your body best operates in the world, how your relationships work the best, what you need in order to feel really good, and to feel what you need to like retain information, and how you study and how you navigate the world just through these two numbers. And so I'm sure we'll like go briefly and talk briefly about all of them, but the lines kind of are like, I think of them as these building blocks that all are so, so important for the whole. And when you are allowing yourself to really surrender into how you're built and the best way that you're operating, you play your part in the cosmic web, for lack of better words. Like, you play your part in the fabric of this reality in a way that should feel really soothing and really good to your nervous system. Should feel correct for you because it's you.
Right. And we all are supposed to play our part, right? Like we all matter
Yes.
so much and we need to show up as ourselves for the collective, not only for ourselves, but for the collective. And so when you're able to see, it's kind of like, am I wrong in saying it's kind of like your purpose here, your lines? Like this is,
Kind of. So, yeah, like Not quite your purpose, but like the way it's like the mode and the flavor through which your purpose can express. So
Oh, okay.
so your purpose is more like what we call your incarnation cross, or a lot more in how your gates are playing, which I don't think we'll get into today, but
Oh, it's too
your
much. You'll have to come
yeah,
back.
it's way too much. The lines are really the architecture that your purpose gets to express through. And it's like once you're landed in your way, right? Once you're landed in navigating in a way that is really well fitted for your mind and for your body, then everything else starts to unfold in a very, very seamless and really fun way.
And you feel more fulfilled, right? When you're operating through.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally, totally.
Okay, cool. So I would love to just dive in with one. And it's funny because can you kind of talk to about like some people might resonate with more than one line that they're not in and like why that is? Because I had someone to write me on Instagram stories and be like, what's your human design? Or do you have a one in yours? Because that's like the trial and error vibe, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Because I was talking
No,
about how,
no, sorry, 3 is trial and error.
okay, maybe
Yeah.
what is one? What is
1 is
it?
the investigator.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So it was because I was talking about how when I don't go like 72% into something, I give 100% to everything.
Yeah.
Every client session, if I'm doing hypnotherapy, I got trained twice by two different
Oh, totally,
programs.
very
Like,
1.
right. So she was like, "Are you a one?" And I said, "No, that's funny you say that. I get where you're coming from, but I'm a 4
Yeah.
6." But can you explain why I would kind of be like that a little
Be the
bit?
one, yeah, so this is where if you're brand new to human design, this could sound a little confusing, but technically you have all of the lines somewhere in your chart.
Okay.
Your profile is your 2 most important lines, but, like, you have ones in your chart, and so you might have a 1 in your Mercury. This is where astrology comes in, which is what you're here to teach and what you're here to communicate in the world, that you might be leading in your communication more with the one, and so
Okay.
people might see that. So when we get deeper, we're just doing very, very, very high level of the lines, but when we get deeper and more nuanced, you start to look at all of your lines in your chart, which you'll have 26 lines
Oh.
that you'll count. So
Okay.
you have 2 most important ones, but you'll have 26 lines, and then you also have lines under lines under lines, which again, if you're just listening to this first time, you're like, "Oh my god, this is a
Yeah.
lot." It gets simpler. If I was to show you it and like walk you through it, it would seem simpler. But yeah, that's a great question. You might be hearing, and again, I'm just going to go through this very, very high level, but you might hear one of the lines and you might be like, wow, I'm a 5-1, but I really feel like a 6. Like I really relate to the 6. Well, you might have the sixth line in your spiritual work in the world, or like in a very dominant placement in your chart. So this would be something that we could like dive deeper in a one-on-one setting, or in, a course or classes to really
Right.
like break down you. But
Right.
my overarching speech about this, I'm just gonna call it a speech, is starting to work with your lines as your profile. So for example, you're a 4-6 and I'm a
Mhm.
6-2, and starting to play within that is the foot in the door to the rest of everything starting to activate. So starting to just play with the numbers that I'm gonna share
Yeah.
is a really, really good starting point. So I'll when I talk about all the lines, if you pull up your human design chart and look at your profile, so you'll either be, I'm gonna talk through all the profiles very briefly, either a 1-3, a 1-4, a 2-4, a 2-5, a 3-5, a 3-6, a 4-1, a 4-6, a 5-1, a 5-2, a 6-2, a 6-3. So those are the profiles. And within the lines, so I'll talk about the first line and I'll talk about the profiles that are related to that line. I'm going to break
Yeah.
all of them. Does that sound
That
good?
would oh my god, so good. I'm so
Okay,
excited.
perfect. So we're going to start with the first line. So with the first line, I'm talking to the 1-3s and the 1-4s, and also the 4-1s and the 5-1s. And so if you're a 1-3 or a 1-4, we're talking more about your mind. We're talking more about the way that your mind operates. If I'm talking to the 4-1s or 5-1s, we're talking more about the way that your body operates. So your body consciousness. So the one line is the foundation. The one line is where it all begins. The one line is the investigator. The one line creates is here to like dive deep into all the topics and all the nuances and whatever is sparking you. Like the one line is the fountain of all knowledge. The one line is the person that has the details to back it. The one line is the person that when you have that spark of interest, you're here to like gather all the details. You're here to dive in. You're here to do all the trainings. For someone, if it's in your mind, it's like deep mental knowledge, deep research. It's like the person that has the most depth on the most things is the one. And if it's in your body, it's like you need to investigate and try things on with your body in order for it to feel safe. So like you don't know if something's for you until you actually like physically try it out and investigate it. And that
That's so
might be like a little bit
interesting.
of a timid investigation at first, but it's like gotta try it, gather the details, like try it in different ways. And I always say that the one line has this, it's almost like a fear. It's like an ancestral fear a little bit linked to it because it is the base root of survival. It's like the very beginning of the entire architecture of all of the lines, and so it needs to have a little bit of healthy fear that then leads it to have the depth, that leads it to have the knowledge, that leads it to make sure that it's safe. So sometimes when I see first lines in relationships, it's like these are the people who, if there's gonna be like they're entering a new relationship, they're gonna do all the research. They're the researchers, they're gonna dive into all the things. They're gonna look at all the LinkedIn's and like get as much detail about this person as possible.
The FBI
And
agent.
yeah, yeah, it's super, super real for the first line. And what I say to all first lines, or if you're like talking or communicating with a first line, it's very, very important to ask them about their current interests. Like dive in, like ask them and like continue to ask them questions and see what's sparking them, see what they know, and like let them know how unique this is about them because we don't have the foundation if we don't have the first. And like, see if you're a first line, see the things that are really intriguing you and that you are investigating deeply and that you want to either share with the world or create, and know that the way in which you are diligent in navigating whatever it is that is your interest is really profound and really, the one line is the one that like the world actually has trained us to be the most in terms of how we learn. It's like that's more conducive to the one line than any other line. It's like
Right.
research, like have the thing to back it. Like the one line has the most backing of any of the other lines. So, yeah, one line, I say the most important thing is like, what are you actually interested in? Because you have an infinite well to dive in and to dive in and to dive in once you figure out what those interests are, and you can always pivot. But what are the things that you want to go deep and have like the infinite wellspring of depth about? That's where to point your gaze. And so that usually is either like it's for all one line. So again, 1314 4151, it's figuring out the thing. And then for if it's in your mind, it's more like what do you intellectually want to dive deep in? And then if it's for the body, it's like what do you want to try out and continue to investigate with your body? That might be a specific movement practice. That might be a way of, yeah, a lot of times it's movement practice, but it's like a way of putting your body like and like learning and investigating with your body in a thing. It's a little bit more physical than if you're a 1-3 and a 1-4. That's the one.
Love it.
And I always think of the one, I like to paint a picture of a garden, of the lines being like a garden. And I always think of the one as like the shovel in the garden. It's where everything begins. If we're building a garden, we're starting with the shovel and we're like figuring out where is the good land that we can actually like plant the entire
Right.
garden. So that's the one. So we have the two. And if you're a 2, I'm talking to 2-4, 2-5, 5-2, 6-2. And the 2, remember, if it's the first number, it's more in your mind. Second number, it's more in your body.
Also, wanna
So
interrupt you real quick. We
yes.
before we got on, we were like, "Let's pull up a few celebrities and talk about them so that people listening are like, oh, okay, like, can give it more of a really concrete example," and Rihanna is a 2-4.
Rihanna is a 2-4.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that you brought up Rihanna. So Rihanna's a 2-4, and I'll talk about her a little bit at the end of talking
Perfect.
about it. Yeah, at the end of talking about the 2 and how I see the 2 relating to her.
I love it.
Um, but the 2, in terms of the garden, the 2 is like the seed that's planted deep underground. A lot of times the 2 is known as the hermit or the natural. The two is a very cyclical being. The two is kind of like this naturally gifted and talented being that it's not about the investigating. It's about diving into its natural gifts. It's about being with its natural muse. And the two needs a lot of alone time. It needs a lot of time just to be with itself and be with its natural muse, but it can't necessarily see its gifts because it's always had them. And so the two is very interesting because it both needs time alone, needs time underground. It's the gift, right? It's the seed, but it also needs sunlight and needs watering and needs to be pulled out by something else to see it as the gift, or else it's just kind of like in the dark by itself. So the two has a very interesting relationship with the other because it needs its time alone, it needs its time to hermit, it needs its time to kind of cultivate its muse, but then it has this projection field where other people see it and pull it out for its gift. So example, I'm a 6'2", so it's like I don't often see that the way that I either view a system or do something is unique or is naturally gifted or is this, but then other people will reach out and be like, "Hey, I really like the way you speak about that. Like, that's really cool. That's really different. That's really," and that helps pull out the ability to share and like be the gift
Mm.
that the two is. The two is the seed where it all starts. So the
Yeah,
one
we're
is like the
like, "Katie."
foundation.
Yeah,
What'd you
you're
say?
really we're like, "Katie, you're really talented, please come talk to us," and you're like, "Oh,
Yeah,
really?"
and I'm, like, hermiting away, right? The
Yeah.
2 line, like, kinda needs it's cyclical, so it works if you're a 2. Oftentimes, I see 2s kind of beat up on themselves because they have these bursts of being able to share and being able to share their gifts with the world, and then they need a lot of time. They need a lot of, like, inward time, and so quite literally, if we go deeper into the lines, the 2 is like the seasonal eater. The 2 is the seasonal worker,
Mhm, and
and
that's
our
probably
world is
why we've been waiting for years for that next album from Miss Rihanna.
exactly. Well, the 2, if you see, it's like she was big burst, and we'll talk about the 4, which will make more sense with Rihanna, but, like, she's kind of you can't really see her right now. She's creating, but, like, in terms of being in the public eye, she's like, "Nah, I'm doing my thing. I'm being in my natural muse, and I'm being in my natural gift," and she has all of these natural gifts that are just coming through one after the other in her art, in her creations as a businesswoman and yeah, like her clothing lines, her beauty lines, like she's doing the thing, but she's kind of doing the thing from behind the scenes right now, which is a really cool representation of the two. Because more likely than not, all of a sudden, then she'll just pop off again. She'll be like, "Okay, my next season has come, and this is what I'm doing in my next season." But witness the twos in your life, and witness when they're going in. And if you see a gift that needs to be pulled out, oftentimes knocking on the door of that two is very very helpful because they can't always see themselves. So very different from the one, right? The one is kind of investigating and digging into everything and creating the foundation and making sure that the seed can be planted. And the two is just kind of like underground, creating life. And but it's kind of tucked away and hidden until it gets pulled out, which is where we get to the three.
The
So
3.
the three is what we like to call in traditional human design is the martyr. I like to call it the experimenter, like the mad scientist. And the profiles for the three are the 1-3, the 3-5, the 3-6, and the 6-3. And so again, like I said before, if the three is the first number, so 3-5s, 3-6s, more the mind. If you're a 1-3 or a 6-3, more the body. The 3 in the garden is like where all of the seeds bloom. The 3 is all the plants. The 3 is the garden. The 3 is the mad creation, the mad scientist. The 3 has the greatest sense of humor of all the lines. The 3 is about just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. It's the mad scientist. It's the you can't mess this up. It's the you're meant to mess this up so that you can see what works and what doesn't. So the 3 is meant to make mistakes. Like the biggest thing with the 3 is just try it. You can't the 3 is very different from the 1. So if you're a 1-3, you have a lot of polarity in your chart because in one way you're like a deep investigator, but then your body's just trying to like make a mess and get dirty and try all the things. So you'll hear as I talk about the profiles if you're a 2-4 or if you're a 6-2 or if you're a right, all of them have some polarity in it.
Mhm.
So the 3 is really like the mad creation. And if you look at the garden, if you think about the 3 as the flowers that are blooming and the seeds that are blooming, it's like some will bloom into beautiful flowers and some will be rot. Like some will rot, some will be weeds. And you need it all to kind of figure out how to do it right. And so for all of my threes, just try things on for size. Like, don't be afraid of messing up because you are where the creation begins. You're where the creation begins. And the one, the two, and the three are all what we call lower trigram. And so the one, the two, and the three are more personal. They're more about the self. They're more about like the one's personal process. Whereas when we talk about the four, the five, the six, it's more collective. It's more what we call transpersonal. And so when we're about to go to the four, the three and the four are very interesting. They kind of straddle this line where the three is where the creation begins. It's where the creation begins. It's where we start to really connect with the people and the people like helping the one, the two, and the three do the things, which is where I'm going to get to the four. And so Rihanna's an example, right? Rihanna's a 2-4. So she has four in her body. And if you are a four, you're either a 1-4, a 2-4, a 4-1, or a 4-6, like you. And so the four in traditional human design is called the opportunist. I like to think of it as like the people person or the tribal networker. The four is really when the people come into the lines with human design. So in our garden, we have the bloom of the three. And now the four are like the farmers and the gardeners who are seeing the beautiful garden and want to share it, want to share the flowers with the market or come to the garden and help, prune and help bring everything and share it with the whole. The four are the tribal networkers. The four are the people who are here to make the bonds in society. The fours, all of your opportunities are really coming from being connected with the right people and being the heart. When I teach the four in classes, it's always like where the heart lives in the world. It's like the four sees the other so clearly and loves the other. And it's really important that your relationships as a four are reciprocal because they are where a lot of your opportunities come from. And you want to give to your people in all regards. And so I see you nodding and smiling. You're like, yes. It's like you want to be it. The four's deepest wounding is giving, 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 giving to the tribe, like supporting with opportunities, and that kind of being like backslashed by the other or not having the same reciprocity. And so my biggest thing with fours, so if you have your four in your mind, it's like the people who can share and exchange ideas and share, intellectually, like building your dreams, your mental dreams into reality. And if you have a four in your body, it's more about like who does your body feel good with? Who does it feel safe around? The four will always be tuning to the people. And the best thing and the most important thing if you are a four is to ensure that you're surrounded by the right people because your people and your connections are everything, everything. And you're really the heartbeat of your community. And so what's interesting, we'll talk about Rihanna for a second, about her profile. She's a 2-4, right? The first number is the hermit. So she's like going in, she's being in her muse. And then the second number, the four, is all about being with people, being external. So there's this huge polarity in this dance with like
So
two
much
four
duality.
profiles.
Yeah.
And which part of it is like being really alone, but then part of your purpose is really needing to be outward and with the right people. And you'll see this in the way Rihanna cycles, and you'll also see it in her relationships. So like a lot of, I think, through people that she's dated and things like have started as friends. So a lot of fourth lines, people that they'll date or people that they'll be in deep romantic partnerships with oftentimes start as friends, or work collaborations oftentimes start as people who you just want to hang out with, people who you want to be friends with. So if you're a fourth line, very important, like look at your surrounding network. Do you feel good around them? Do you feel like these are mutually supportive? So
Yeah,
that's the
that
four.
definitely resonates because my friends, like, are everything to me, and then obviously having a podcast, I'm like,
Mm,
I want more friends and I wanna share, I want community, I want people like you coming on and sharing everything that's helped them so that we can all learn, so that makes a lot of sense.
totally, totally. You're such a four too. This and like podcasting is such a four activity, right? It's like how do we connect with more people and connect more people with people I love. It's so beautiful. It's so
I'm
living
such
in
a
your design.
4.
Yeah, you're such a four. And you're mentally sharing as a four. You're a 4-6, right? So you're mentally sharing the things that inspire you and you're sharing with them with the people. It's a very, very cool, yeah, it's a very cool way to kind of live out your archetype.
Thank
And you'll
you.
just continue to find those things. Um, Now we move to the five. So The 5, I mean, anyone who's been through, like, any of my programs or classes, I'm obsessed with the 5. I actually have, like, the least amount of fifth lines in my chart, and so when I started creating this architecture around the lines 4.5 years ago, I so confused by the 5. I was like, "I don't get the 5, like, I just don't understand the 5." And now I'm in the place where I'm like, it's all about the 5. It's about freeing the 5. The 5 is where we're stuck in society when the 5 doesn't feel free, when the 5 is wounded. And so the 5, well, what is the 5? If you have a 5 in your profile, you're either a 2-5, 3-5, a 5-1, or a 5-2. And the 5th line in the garden is like, it's like the sun. Fifth line is like the sun. It's like the thing that can save the day. It's the thing that can save the day. It's the thing that can make the plants rise. It's the thing that can solve the problem. It's the thing that everyone sees and it sees everyone. So the
Mhm.
sun, sorry, the sun in the
The 5 is
garden,
the sun.
the 5 is the sun. And the 5 also can be obscured, right? Like the sun can be obscured. The sun can have clouds all around it. The sun can have solar flares. It's a very, very powerful force. And the 5th line has the opportunity to universalize, to reach the farthest of anyone. And so I know we talked about some celebrity profiles, like Taylor Swift is a 5-1, Billie Eilish is a 5-1, Britney Spears is a 5-1. I think you pulled up Harry Styles is a 5-1. I have all of these like 5-1s are what I see as like the most biggest like fame profile, fifth lines, and like particularly 5-1s in what I have researched and tracked, because the fifth line truly has the ability, everyone has influence, but to reach the people that they don't see. The fourth line is reaches far through the close network, and then that close network brings the message farther and farther. The fifth line is the one that will say something and won't even know that it's impacting this person across the room over here. It doesn't see its impact as much. So it's a very different way of looking at it. But the thing about a fifth line is that it has this projection field where everyone kind of projects onto it that it can save the day and solve the problem and is this or that or whatever. It can be good projections, it can be bad projections. And the fifth line can also project outward like an image. It can kind of swan and be an image of what it wants other people to perceive it as, which can be very, very confusing. It can be a very confusing way to live because the fifth line can kind of be like, yeah, it can be a hall of mirrors. It kind of living in this hall of mirrors. Sometimes we call it the heretic in traditional human design. I kind of like to call it the mirror. And I like to think of the fifth line as the mirror. And so much of what I'm really, really excited about right now is freeing the fifth line in all of us. Because when the fifth lines are living in reaction to what other people are projecting on it, or of like creating an image of themselves, it does this weird thing within our society where everything is kind of built on a foundation of lies. Because if you think about it, the fifth line has a lot of influence, outward influence. And so it's very, very, I feel very strongly about freeing the fifth lines, being like, it's okay if people are projecting, no matter what they're going to project. Like, who do you want to be? How do you want to be free? And when the fifth lines are operating freely, it creates access for all of us to be free, because then we have the sixes. And so every single line is building off of each other. And you're a 6, and I'm a 6. I'm a 6-2. You're a 4-6. So if you're a sixth line, you're either a 3-6, a 4-6, a 6-2, or a 6-3. And the sixth line is very different from all the rest of the lines. So my like thought within this architecture and this framework right now is that we're still all collectively kind of caught in the 5. It's like we can't really get to the 6 collectively until we free the 5. And the sixth line is the role model. The sixth line is the only line within the human design system that has a 3-phase, like a tripartite life process. And so 0 to 30 is the first phase, and the 0 to 30 for a sixth line is looked as the trial and error phase. They kind of act like a 3 line, and it's about getting all of this experience in life so that you can be the embodied role model. So that by the time you hit 30, I just turned 30, so I'm just my
Me too.
entire really, are you 94?
93.
93.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're in the
Yeah.
same like Saturn cycle.
Yes.
And that first phase, my entire time teaching human design so far has been as a sixth line, aware of being a sixth line. And so I bring this up for everyone listening because human design is a relatively new system. It was founded in 1987. And so the first, I'm what we call a second generation human design teacher. The first generations learned directly under Ra. And the first generation human design people weren't really aware of being sixth lines during the first process. So we have the first generations of sixth lines who are aware that they're sixth lines in their first 30 years now teaching and sharing the system. And so my entire time as a sixth line in this human design process so far, I learned that I was a sixth line when I was like 21. And I was like, what do you mean that my first 30 years need to be all trial and error and need to be challenging or like every bond's made and broken and all this stuff? And just turning 30 and just coming onto the second phase now, which is called being on the roof, which is around 30 to 50. And the second phase is like taking everything from the first phase and building with it. It's what when they say all of your lasting and like even like romantic partnerships and relationships really solidify in this phase. It's when they say business can really start blasting off in this phase. And I remember being a young sixth line and being like, I don't want to wait to be the role model. And what I'm witnessing is that the sixth line is always the role model. The sixth line is always has this kind of like worldly and wise perspective, embodied perspective, but it needs to get a lot of real life, like messy experience in order to have the real embodied knowledge so that it can share as the role model. Because the whole thing with the sixth line is that by the time you're 50, you're like the ultimate role model in society. And so as I've been living as a six line, what a lot of the original teachings of human design say is that the six is this mutative line. The six is kind of very, very different than the rest of the lines. And so much of where we're at societally is not at the six yet. And so in the garden, I think of the six kind of as the fairy floating in the clouds.
Yes.
It's like kind of doesn't really get the whole humaning thing. It has this wisdom that's almost from above, but then it needs to get really caught up in all the human drama in order to understand it, to then pull itself up onto the roof and share a perspective from a different angle, perspective from above. And so
Mhm.
the reason why I put the sixth line is like this fairy or kind of this creature in the clouds is because the sixth line is watching the whole process of the garden that's happening, is watching how is the sun shining correctly enough so that there's enough light? Are the people working well together as the fourth lines? Is the garden blooming as the third? Is the second line actually allowing itself to bloom? Is the first line making sure the foundation is all good? And the sixth is just waiting to be like, hey, there's also different worlds up here too. And there's different ways that we can bring knowledge to this world. So part of my work right now too, and so much of my emphasis is going to be in where we not only can land ourselves into our lines, but that every line can free itself so that the five can be free, so that the six can kind of bring this knowledge down. Because what happens with the lines is when we're not safe to be the 2-4 that we are, when we're not safe to be the 6-2 that we are, when we're not safe to be the 1-3, it kind of messes up everything else. Like everyone else kind of bounces off of each other in weird ways, and the whole structure doesn't live in its highest way. And where we're at in society right now is things are changing, and there's actual very real structures, financial structures, institutional structures, political structures that are at this turning point of needing to reconstitute themselves and in many ways needing to fall in rebirth. And I see so much of this happening in the architecture of the lines and in like where we're moving is instead of projecting an image, a false image, the fifth lines are projecting a true image, which they know in the core, which allows the sixth line to then reveal a different perspective on things. So that's so could go into it forever and ever and ever. And there's a million angles to look at the lines, but it is such a brilliant, expansive architecture. It's such a brilliant, expansive way to start orienting yourself to your own life. And the more and more I live out my 6-2, the more and more the right opportunities match me, more and more the right people come to me, the more and more I feel like I'm living as myself. It's hard to even describe because it's more of just a frequency and the texture of how every day is lived, and it just feels better. So it's all little nuggets in the sand of the lines, which I am so pumped to continue sharing insights that I've been stewing on for a long time, but that I see can really radically transform your life in a way that truly is magic. It's like I believe in magic on earth in every possible way, and living
Me
out the
too.
lines and journeying through the lines is real life lived magic, and it's right here at our fingertips.
Yeah, that's so incredible. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And I feel like everyone listening probably got so much permission. That's how it feels, kind of like a relief
Mm,
and a permission, especially when you were talking about the threes, that mad
yes,
scientist.
it
That
needs
must
it.
be, yeah, that must be really frustrating and exhausting. And at times you feel so much doubt to hear that, oh no, that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm,
I'm sure it gives
mhm.
them so much permission to actually be themselves. Okay, I'm all right. It's all gonna work out, and the
Yeah.
more that I let myself do this, the more that I'll see the fruits of that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's like nothing else can be created without the threes, right? Or without anyone.
Mm,
But we need every single part in order for truly, and I don't use this lightly, but the new earth to be
mhm.
actualized.
I have one question before I let you go. Do
Yeah.
you believe in reincarnation, and do you believe that we always come back as the same lines, or it would be different lines?
Oh, this is I've never gotten this question before. So I totally believe in I would know don't know if I would say reincarnation, but I believe that souls come back in different forms again
Mhm,
and again. And sometimes they come back on Earth and sometimes they go other places. But I do believe that souls cannot be destroyed
mhm,
and that energy can't be destroyed and that souls move through different realms and many times do circle back as humans. I don't think souls and again, I have no knowledge, but I don't believe that souls come back as the same profile. I think every single time one of my favorite books is Journey of Souls. Talks kind of about it's this psychotherapist who did thousands of case studies on bringing people into deep trance-based states
yeah,
and into the in-between realms, like into what happens between death and life and death, and would receive the same information again and again. And basically, a lot of my awareness or thoughts on this subject come from that, which is basically that we're on a mission as souls of progressive soul growth. And I don't believe a soul would choose to come into the same architecture every time because it wouldn't create more soul growth. It wouldn't
mhm,
allow you to feel yourself in a new form of creation and creating a reality. So I'm
mhm.
sure we exist in all sorts of architectures. And maybe there are some that need to just have the lesson of being a 6-2 again and again and again, but I don't think there's a one size fits all answer to that.
Yeah, wow, I need to read that book. That sounds so
Yeah, you'll love it. Journey of Souls, highly recommend.
okay, literally adding it to my list.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say if anyone's listening to this and they felt like they got an aha moment, please message me and Katie. We'd love to hear.
Yeah.
And how do we work with you, Katie? Where can we find you on socials? What can we do?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So my socials are I have two Instagrams at Katie Calder underscore or at Human Design Lady. I'm at katiecalder.com. You can book a session there. All of my courses, my teacher trainings, my classes are there. I do retreats and have a lot of fun opportunities coming up for deepening for mentorship. I would say hi there if you feel called to book. I open up my books about every week, like 2 weeks ahead of time. So if you don't see more openings more than 2 weeks, because I only book 2 weeks ahead. But I would love, love, love to meet you online, in person, in the Instagram realms. And Caitlin, I just want to say thank you so, so, so much for having me here. It's such a blessing to meet you. Yeah, it feels like in person after weaving online, and I can't wait for actual in person someday. I hope,
I know.
hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I would absolutely love that. It's been incredible. Thank you so much. And I want to just add on to that. Both her accounts are amazing, but the human design lady is so great because you do like kind of like memes and also just like short pockets of information
Yeah.
about like the energy types and stuff. So when you are learning, it really helps to just get those little pieces when you're in your master classes or doing a reading, but it adds on to that being like, oh, okay, I get it in these little
Yes.
pockets. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's my Human Design Lady account too is I built it out so that you can go through and kind of go through your chart. So I have all this free content there that's kind of like a labor of deep, deep, deep love. But if you scroll down all the way to the beginning of my Human Design Lady account, I go through the base architecture of your human design chart. So I go through your energy type and what that means and your authority. So I would say definitely dive into there because I worked hard on it and I worked lovingly on it and I've laid it out so that you have a really, really good foundation to then dive into the deeper levels.
So, so cool. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for
Absolutely.
listening, you guys. We'll see you
Thanks.
next time. Bye.
Bye.
Wait, before you go, grab your free gift in the show notes. If you feel like success is so hard for you, or you feel like you have to work so hard in order to manifest things, like it can't just come with ease just because you are being who you are. You have to work really hard in order to get what you want. You don't have to do that all the time. Yeah, of course, action is required at times, but you don't have to hustle and struggle in order to manifest your desired reality. You can allow things to be easy. Sometimes things get to be easy and you allow yourself to be lucky. I've helped over 26,000 people become lucky through this free gift. You will also get an email with a 20-minute exercise that clears any limiting beliefs you have around being lucky and also clears that need to work hard every time to get anything that you want. It doesn't always have to be that way. You can take action and get things, and you also can allow God, spirit, universe, angels, whatever you believe in, to assist in bringing you your dream reality. You don't have to do it all alone. So make sure you grab that gift, and I will see you back here next Tuesday for an all new episode of Power Talk. Click follow show to get first access. Thanks for listening. Bye.